Bill finishes off our seminar today is the failure to use a trust in survivorship or beneficiary designations to avoid probate upon the death of the surviving spouse, to save the cost of probate, as well as to keep the estate plan for heirs private. Anytime clients come in and say, well, I want to avoid probate because the government's going to take all my money, I say, no, it's not the government, it's just the attorneys. The probate court process, the probate court that is there to oversee your wishes and make sure that your estate plan is carried out, whether you have a will or whether you have laws of intestacy. I've been practicing now for 13 years, and I haven't had a situation where laws of intestacy that somebody didn't have any heirs and that it went to the state of Ohio. There's usually somebody in the tree that's going to receive the property. So government is not going to take the assets. And also from an estate tax standpoint, now that we have over $11 million exemption per person, most people, married couple, you can pass $22 million to your heirs, estate tax free. Ohio has repealed their estate tax. In Kentucky, there's no inheritance tax for immediate family members. So most people are not in an estate tax situation. The probate fees, really, it does come down to the attorney fees. And it's there because there's just so much administration. When you have to go through probate, the attorney, you have to get somebody appointed, then you have to do an inventory of the assets. Depending on the number of assets, it could be a lot of work trying to gather everything together, value, if you have a lot of securities, doing date of death values, and then transferring property, and then closing out the estate, doing a final accounting. And you do have to do an accounting to account for every receipt, every disbursement. You have to have bank statements. So it just becomes a cost, a money. It's a moneymaker for attorneys, because most of the times people just hand me their bank statements and then I have to recreate the accounting, and it just takes time. So the benefit of whether you have a trust or you have beneficiary designations is that you do avoid the probate process. But I caution people that sometimes probate is the best thing. I have a lot of people that come into my office and their asset is their house, and they say, well, I have to avoid probate, and somebody told me that I can do a transfer on death deed to avoid probate. And that's true. If you have a transfer on death deed, the property passes to the heirs. Well, if you have a case where you have a person that has 5 children and they're going to do a transfer on death deed to 5 children, what that means is that title immediately passes to those 5 children. And when they go to sell the property, they all 5 have to consent, and all of their spouses also have to consent. So in that scenario, imagine trying to get 10 people to be able to consent on the sale of property. Whereas if they have a will that says it goes to those 5 children, then the executor sells that property. They don't have to get the consent of the 5 children, and then they disperse the proceeds 5 ways. I had a client just recently, their only child, thinking about doing a transfer on death deed, but the child was in a situation where maybe getting divorced. So a child that now has to get an estranged spouse to sign off on the sale. So, there are some, in certain scenarios, probate might not be a bad thing. Everything is a case-by-case basis. You really have to weigh the pros and the cons. But the one negative about probate is that it's public record, and especially in Hamilton County, you can go online and see exactly what everybody inherited. And, while some people say, well, I don't care because I'll be dead, but what about your family? And again, it's the outside influences, the people that come into your family, friends' lives because they found out that you got a $500,000 inheritance. And so most people, when you think about that, really want to keep your affairs, estate information private, and keep it out of probate.